Before going to war, Gowon began what was to become a 2.5-year-long shopping list of arms that the Gowon-led government wanted from Britain. On 1st July, he asked Britain for jet fighter bomber aircraft, 6 fast boats, and 24 anti-aircraft guns. We want to help the federal government in any way we can, British officials noted. However, Britain rejected supplying the aircraft, fearing that they would publicly demonstrate direct British intervention in the war, and at this stage also rejected supplying the boats. London did, however, agree to supply the anti-aircraft guns and to provide training courses to use them. Faced with Gowon's complaints about Britain not supplying more arms, Wilson also agreed in mid-July to supply the Gowon-led government with the fast patrol boats. This was done in the knowledge that they would help the Gowon-led government maintain the blockade against Biafra. Wilson wrote to Gowon saying that we have demonstrated in many ways our support for your government as the legal government of Nigeria and our refusal to recognize the secessionists. He also told him that Britain does not intend to put any obstacle in the way of orders for reasonable quantities of military material of types similar to those who have obtained in the past. Gowon replied saying that I have taken note of your concurrence for the usual purchases of arms supplies to continue and will take advantage of what is available now and others when necessary. On 23rd November 1967, the cabinet agreed that a quick federal military victory provided the best hope for an early end to the fighting. By early December, Commonwealth Secretary George Thompson noted that the lack of supplies and ammunition is one of the things that are holding operations up. He said that Britain should agree to the Gowon-led government's recent shopping list, since favorable response to this request ought to give us every chance of establishing ourselves again as the main supplier of the Nigerian forces after the war. If the war ended soon, the Nigerian economy will start expanding and there should be a valuable business to be done. Also, anything that we now do to assist the Gowon-led government should help our oil companies to re-establish and expand their activities in Nigeria after the war, and more generally, should help our commercial and political relationship with post-war Nigeria. He ended by saying he hoped Britain could supply armored cars since they have proved of a special value in the type of fighting that is going on in Nigeria, and the Gowon-led government are most impressed with the Saladins and Ferrets previously supplied by Britain. As a result, Britain supplied 6 Saladin armored personnel carriers APCs, 30 Saracen APCs, along with 2,000 machine guns for them, anti-tank guns, and 9 million rounds of ammunition. Dennis Healy, the Defense Secretary, wrote that he hoped these supplies will encourage the Nigerians to look to the United Kingdom for their future purchases of defense equipment. By the end of the year, Britain had also approved the export of 1,050 bayonets, 700 grenades, 1,950 rifles with grenade launchers, 15,000 IBs of explosives, and 2 helicopters. In the first half of the following year, 1968, Britain approved the export of 15 million rounds of ammunition, 21,000 mortar bombs, 42,500 howitzer rounds, 12 Oerlikon guns, Bofors guns, 500 submachine guns, 12 Saladins with guns and spare parts, 30 Saracens and spare parts, 800 bayonets, 4,000 rifles, and 2 other helicopters. At the same time, Wilson was constantly reassuring Gowon of British support for a united Nigeria, saying in April 1968 that, I quote, "I think we can fairly claim that we have not wavered in this support throughout the Civil War." At the end of March 1969, Harold Wilson, Britain's Prime Minister, arrived in Lagos. He had offered to come the preceding Christmas to try to arrange a temporary truce, but the federal government had made plain their opposition. It became clear then, if there were ever any doubts that officially Britain was not only firmly behind Nigeria, but intended to maintain the support, the presence of a British Prime Minister in Lagos and the fact that he visited federal occupied parts of Biafra, where he made speeches declaring Britain's support for one Nigeria, constituted the final imprimatur of the policy of the British government. Even though it criticized the visit, the Biafran Propaganda Directorate was rather cautious about the way it handled criticisms of the British. Biafra had always maintained that the Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, was acting against the will of the British people, members of his party, and of Parliament. There was still hope in Biafra that they could win Britain over as the war progressed. All they had to do was hang in there until Nigerian credibility waned and the outside world asked more questions. Rather, Biafra directed its propaganda at Gowon, calling him a puppet. They claimed that he could not take decisions on his own. That was why he had to invite his lord and master to come and show him what to do. These massive arms exports were being secretly supplied, indeed massively stepped up, at a time when one could read about the actions of the recipients in the newspapers. After the Biafran withdrawal from the Midwest in September 1967, a series of massacres started against Igbo residents. The New York Times reported that over 5,000 had been killed in various towns of the Midwest. About 1,000 Igbos were killed in Benin City by local people with the acquiescence of the federal forces, the New York Review noted in December 1967. Around 700 Igbo males were lined up and shot in the town of Asaba, the Observer reported in January 1968. According to eyewitnesses, the Nigerian commander orders the execution of every Igbo male over the age of 10. This was also the period where the chief of Obafemi Awolowo-led international Nigerian delegation advised General Yakubu Gowon to use starvation as a weapon to force the surrender of the Ojukwu-led government. In one of the peace delegation meetings held in Ghana that saw the attendance of Gowon and Ojukwu, it was proposed that a 10-mile-wide demilitarized zone patrolled by neutral international troops should be set up to allow relief supplies to pass to Biafran refugees. Gowon is said to have rejected this, and his comments and attitude seemed to confer that he would not have been able to guarantee the actions of his soldiers at the front. With the economic and military blockade, everything stopped coming. Biafra accused Nigeria of seeking to starve Biafran citizens into submission and of using starvation as a weapon of war. Biafra had no hard currency to exchange for goods and materials because it could no longer export. Insurance cover was denied to all shipping lines venturing beyond Lagos port, apart from the threat of being boarded and searched. The area was described by Nigeria as a war zone, while claiming that she was only carrying out a police action to keep Nigeria one government.